But one of the people that I have relied upon for many years as a source of information and inspiration, now I'm very happy to say chairs the Center's military committee. And he is going to introduce our guest of honor, the recipient of the Freedom Flame Award for 2011. He is Admiral James Ace Lyons, a retired four-star admiral who finished up his long and distinguished career in the United States Navy as the Commander-in-Chief of the Pacific Fleet. I remember vividly him mentioning to me with some feeling a few months back that he had more ships under his command when he was CINCPAC Fleet than the entire United States Navy has today. It's that kind of experience, it's that kind of service, it's that kind of leadership that we have come to revere in Ace Lyons, and I'm very pleased that he's able to join us tonight to introduce his old friend and mine, John Lehman. Admiral Lyons.
I've known John Lehman for many years. He has had more influence on the United States Navy than anybody since Teddy Roosevelt and the Great White Fleet. John learned early on about the Navy from his dad, who was captain of an LCS as a lieutenant junior grade and fought in the early battles for Okinawa. In his early college and graduate days, his inquisitive mind was put to full use. While he was at Cambridge, he spent many hours at the Tickle Arms over a pint, discussing the issues of the day. It was there that he learned to hone his debating skills. Sometimes he was asked, "Why didn't you go to Oxford?" And he would reply, "I was rejected when they found out my mother and father were married." It was at graduate school at the University of Pennsylvania where John met one of his mentors, Dr. Robert Strauss-Hupé. And it was through that relationship that brought John to Washington, and where he joined the Nixon administration and worked directly for Henry Kissinger and Richard Allen. It was under the master, Henry Kissinger, that he learned to consolidate power, which he would put to good use later on. John was the congressional liaison point man for the administration. This let him establish close working relationships with the defense titans on Capitol Hill, such as Senator John Stennis, John Tower, and Henry Jackson. Later on, he was appointed by President Ford as the Deputy Director for the Arms Control and Disarmament Agency. When Ronald Reagan won the presidency, he made a vow to build a 600-ship Navy to restore our maritime superiority. The man he chose to make that vow a reality was John Lehman. Now, he was a young, politically savvy, aggressive guy who knew how to get things done in Washington. He knew how to work the bureaucracy. Furthermore, he was also a qualified naval aviator who had flown combat missions in Vietnam on his Naval Reserve active duty time. Now, you would have thought the uniformed Navy would have greeted him with open arms. Not to be the case. He was greeted like a skunk at a picnic. What they wanted for a Secretary of the Navy was somebody they could pat on the head and send them off to make Navy League speeches while they ran the Navy. Well, were they in for a surprise? John understood the culture of the Navy had to be changed. The programmers and budgeteers of the old boy network were out. Operators were brought in. There was one delicate personnel matter that every Secretary of the Navy had avoided like the plague, and that was how to retire Admiral Rickover gracefully. John devised a unique idea to make him the special advisor to the president for nuclear energy. Everything was set. Everything was set. They all marched into the Oval Office. President Reagan, being the great gentleman that he was, warmly greeted the admiral, escorted him by the arm over to an armchair in front of the roaring fire, sat him down and started telling him how grateful the nation was for his years of service, at which point Rickover interrupted him and said, cut the crap. Why are you listening to these two piss ants?" pointing to John and Cap Weinberger. "They don't know what the hell they're doing." And then he turned back to the president. He said, do you know what you're doing? Do you know how to be president? And it went downhill from there. Talk about one's career flashing before his eyes. Fortunately, John survived the day, and fortunate for the Navy, because we were just emerging from the disastrous Carter years, where the Navy had gone from over 900 ships and was down to 477. 75 of those ships were overdue for their major overhaul. We were down in every readiness category. We had senators like Gary Hart advising Carter to build low-tech ships and small carriers. That was a formula for disaster. Come to think of it, I'm wondering, did Hart advise Congressman Weiner? There were many challenges facing the Navy, and John met them head on. He embraced a new maritime strategy, which literally took the fleet into the Soviets' backyard in the Atlantic and the Pacific. There was not going to be a maritime Maginot Line at the GI-UK gap in the Atlantic that sacrificed our NATO allies on the northern flank to the Soviets. He implemented innovative shipbuilding plans. He built high-tech ships like Aegis cruisers, Aegis-equipped Arleigh Burke destroyers. He implemented multi-year carrier buys, which literally saved the taxpayers billions of dollars. Excuse me. He used the same technique for aircraft procurement. There was one innovative shipbuilding program, which was the conversion of 2 supertankers into hospital ships, now called the Mercy and Comfort. These 1,000-bed hospital ships are the most sophisticated afloat trauma facilities in the world. They are what the Navy uses today to project humanity, to show the best of America. John streamlined the management system. He eliminated the Naval Materiel Command, along with 1,000 bureaucrats. The Navy we have today is the Navy that John Lehman built in the 80s. And as Frank Gaffney stole one of my lines, that Navy has shrunk to 277 ships. Now, if John Lehman was Secretary of the Navy today, we would not be building these sorry-ass literal combat ships that can't defend themselves and have no offensive capability. Instead, he would be building the high-tech 21st century Zumwalt-class destroyer, which is built from the keel up to be stealthy and has the power and capabilities to defeat any potential enemy's weapon systems now or in the future, including the Chinese anti-ship ballistic missile. John Lehman would not tolerate the political correctness disease that has infected every echelon of Navy leadership today. John resigned as Secretary of the Navy in April 1987. He went into business and became a very successful investment banker. I got to say, I didn't get anything out of it, but. But he continued to serve his country. He was a valuable member of the 9/11 Commission. He literally devoted hundreds, if not thousands, of hours to that committee's work. The committee had a number of important findings, none more important than the catch of NSA documents that were found literally days before the committee's report went to press. In those documents, it provides proof positive of Iran's involvement in 9/11, utilizing their Hezbollah terrorist proxy group. Now, I want to take you back to 23 October 1983, the day of the Marine barracks bombing in Beirut, Lebanon, where we lost 241 of our finest military personnel. We had proof positive information then. Iran ordered the attacks. Actually, we had the information 4 weeks before, but I didn't get to see it as the Deputy Chief of Naval Operations until 2 days after the bombing, and I showed John that message that day. Now, the Navy, working with the CIA, were able to identify the terrorist group as the Islamic Amal, which was the forerunner to Hezbollah, and where they were located at the Lebanese army barracks above Baalbek, which they took over months before with the help of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards. We had the planes loaded not once, but twice. We had shown the attack plans to John, which he approved, but unfortunately, as Secretary of the Navy, he was not in the operational chain of command. We were essentially going to wipe out the entire Iranian Hezbollah Islamic network, the entire proxy network. We were going to take those Lebanese army barracks, and when we got through with them, they were going to look like a plowed cornfield. However, we could never get authorization to launch. And that's a story for another day. John continued to serve his country by being a valuable member of the National Defense Commission, where he did yeoman work. So it was with a great honor and privilege that I present this year's Freedom Flame Award to the Honorable John F. Lehman, Jr.